Hello guys, welcome back to Carnivore Team GB, the live Q&A hosted by myself, Coach Stephen, Ben Hunt, and Keto Pro, Richard Smith. Unfortunately, Phil is not here today. He's very busy with some business stuff, so he's got some things to attend to, so we're going to leave him be with that one, but he would make it if he could. I just wanted to mention before we actually commence the Q&A segment that Coach Stephen, up that side of me, is actually at the point now where I'd call him an influencer with 10k YouTube subs, which is a great accomplishment for someone that is also a YouTuber. Obviously, Rich would know as well. It takes a lot of time and patience to achieve that, so I just wanted to commend him on that. And before we take any questions, I'd like to just ask Stephen about how his journey's been so far on YouTube. I appreciate he's been uploading now for a couple of years, probably. Heaps of good content, so check it out if you haven't already. But how's that been for you, Stephen?
A learning curve, a very steep one. And also, what I'm doing right now, I don't like doing. I don't like being on camera. I don't like how I look, don't like how I sound. But if you don't do that, nobody knows you're there. You know, literally is a case of putting your head above the parapet and going, here I am, if you like what I've got to say. And it was difficult. When I started, I looked at people putting out content and I thought, Eric Berg seems to be quite successful. I like his flip chart, simple way of explaining things, very short videos. And the more I became a consumer of YouTube, because I also wasn't really a big consumer of YouTube at that point, I realized that I sort of actually liked a bit more meat on the bones, so to speak, when it came to the science and things. I don't think Eric Berg's that bad, but certainly there's a few things he's a bit off about. So, you know, I saw people like Ken Berry and I thought that's very good. Tried to sort of do that sort of video, couldn't really do it very well because these good guys, these really popular guys, they make it look simple, but it's actually not. It's quite difficult to get, say in 10 minutes, 10 really good points across about something, keep it entertaining, keep it pertinent, and, you know, back it with science. It's quite difficult. So, I've taken way too long answering this question. So it's been tough. I think in the last 5 months, I'm beginning to get the hang of it. That would be honest. And also with the interviews, the success stories, I used to worry that people wouldn't want to hear someone for 40 minutes, an hour. But actually, I was very wrong about that. In fact, one of the things I would definitely say is how many times I've been wrong about something. It's been really interesting. And I was using my consuming habits to judge what everyone else would do. So if I ever see a video, even now, if I see a video 2 hours long, I won't watch it because I know I won't watch it. I haven't got 2 hours, so I don't do a 2-hour video. So all my videos are under an hour. I appreciate that some people are out there, you know, Anthony Chafee comes to mind, where he can do 2.5 hours and get 60,000 views. I can't get 60,000 views. So but maybe in 2 years' time, maybe in 3 years' time. But it is a slow, difficult process. I've never earned a lot of money. People might think you earn a lot of money from it. I've not even got to £200 in a month ever. Nearly did it this month and then realized that their estimation was out by 20 quid. So in a month, I've earned £180. And I can assure you, if you worked it out as an hourly rate, it would be under the national minimum. It really would. Jonathan's laughing because I know the amount of effort he puts into his. Definitely, you can see the quality of the production. So, yeah, and the costs, of course, you know, the software. I'm not putting my little hat out to get any donations. Well, I always take donations, but yeah, it's been interesting. I can remember being at 2,500 subscribers maybe a year and a bit ago and promising I would sort of do a crazy dance if I ever got to 4,000, which I can't believe. The other odd thing is it was really creeping up to 10,000 very slowly, and it went to 10,000 this morning, and now it's 10,090 or something, 80, yeah. So today I've gained 80 subs, which has never happened in a day before. So it's an interesting journey.
That's good going. Yeah, I appreciate that and the time and torment it takes to create this content. I can see with Stephen's videos, as someone that makes videos and tries to make them pretty good myself, I can't imagine how many hours he spends on some of them, you know. Even like the shorts videos, like, you know, the clips from the Sizzle podcast, the Q&A you guys do on Sunday. It's not just, crop a video, then it uploads straight away. No, this all takes processing on your computer. It takes time. You have to put the snips in the right place, add in the captions and things, which the software doesn't always accurately produce. So I understand that as well. So we all produce content in different formats. Myself and Stephen, and also Richard, YouTube, Phil, YouTube as well sometimes. But I know Ben and Phil make a lot of content off air in their private group, which is the bigfatchallenge.com. Also got the Big Fat Tribe as well. So that's a kind of different way of doing it, but their stuff's very specialized. So they really answer people's questions, the direct questions that they get. They'll get out in a good video, which is quite succinct, also useful to people. And if they don't know the answer, they'll find out the answer. They'll find a resource. They'll understand who does know the answer, and they'll gather that from them. So that's pretty cool stuff. So yeah, I'm around about the same income as you, Stephen, from YouTube, and it's pretty abysmal per hour, I must admit. But it's helpful. So if any of you guys are watching this right now and you want to subscribe to us, you want to support us, being a YouTube channel member is a good way to do it. It gives us a rolling income, which is something like maybe a couple of quid each month, which is quite affordable to most people. And when people do come up on our chats as members, it's helpful to us to know, okay, we're making good content, so it inspires us to keep doing more. It also motivates us as well. And if you want something even more personal, obviously approach any of us for coaching, consultations. We all offer something. I've been on the Big Fat Challenge, Big Fat Tribe. They do very frequent video calls, Q&As, helpful stuff. Lots of experience behind it. And sometimes a lot of experience that you just don't get from reading a book. So, there's two sides to it in all cases. But, did any of you guys below, so Ben or Richard, have anything to add to that at all?
I'd like to add something, actually, because I forgot to mention it. When we did the Carnivore-a-thon, Rich and myself, we did the 24-hour live stream. I thought that was going to blow the roof off, and I thought we'd get loads of subs, loads and loads. And we didn't, did we, Rich? We got some, but it was an interesting experiment. And next year, when we do the 24-hour live stream, I think it will be, we'll hopefully get more guests, and it'll be smoother, and possibly we will get more subscriptions next time. But that was possibly the highlight of the whole year for me on YouTube, doing that.
Yeah, an incredible feat. Yeah, that's nearly £200 more than I make on YouTube. I don't make a penny. So it's, but it still, as you rightly say, that drives your hourly rate probably to less than £1 an hour with all of the effort and time that goes into the YouTube videos. But it is incredibly difficult. So a fantastic achievement. Super impressive. Make sure you send some of those subs our way.
And of course, the software is expensive. So when I say that, I mean, most times I don't make any money, really, to be honest, because the editing software is about £60 a month before you even start. And then I've got like the Typeform thing, which is like £50. So for 9 of the months, I didn't make any money at all. I just barely broke even. And the year before that, I didn't make, I made the loss really. So it's interesting. I'm not, like I say, after sympathy, I chose to do it. And I do think eventually it will pay dividends. But getting all those success stories and actually helping people has been, I sleep well at night. I feel I'm doing a good job. I think we all are. We're all trying to change the world slowly but surely. And just try and be nice to everybody. I mean, I've got some comments that are just ridiculous. I'm always pleasant. I always try to answer with a level head. Sometimes you just want to say, oh, just go away. You obviously don't want to listen. You just want to moan. But anyway, it's fun. It's good.
Yeah. So, guys, if you're watching this and after the point, perhaps you watch back the live stream, let us know below in the comment section on any of our channels what kind of content you want, what would be helpful to you. A lot of times we've actually already made it. So I know Stephen and I have made quite a few hundred videos. There's probably somewhere in there. We can always signpost you if that's helpful. But Stephen, Ben, Richard, they do put out content in different formats. So Richard does have stuff on his website. So he's actually spent the time to write things out. Very helpful stuff on there. So we try to provide accessible information. So there's like a written form. So I do ebooks. I'm sure the other guys do stuff like that as well. consultations for more personal stuff. You got the YouTube videos. Then also Stephen spends a lot of time adding these captions in to make it readable as well, because not always you can hear someone very well. So people they can't hear very well. They have a hearing impairment. It's helpful to see it written down sometimes. So I appreciate the effort that all of you guys do in terms of content creation. I'm going to scoot over to the questions now. Just a brief reminder from Zabigniew to everyone to hit the like button immediately to maximize the output and the reach of this stream. And the question is from Andy, which is, would you recommend an increase in fat and protein before an endurance run or bike ride? If so, would this be the night before or a few hours prior to the start? Might be a good question for Richard, and perhaps the other guys to chime in as well. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I like to run and ride fasted. The furthest that I've ridden on a bike was 112 miles, the Ironman distance in Ironman Wales. I wasn't competing in Ironman, but I was doing the training with some of the guys that were competing. Obviously, it was my first year of running and cycling. But I always take the same approach. I like to run fasted. I don't like anything in my belly, particularly carbs. Carbs are absolutely counterintuitive, by the way, to athletic performance. For every 1 gram of carb, your body's going to hold on to 3 to 4 grams of water, which means that you could potentially be carrying up to half a stone more. If I was to hand you 7 pound in weight before a marathon, you would look at me stupid. So why do we put the carbs in? Now, for that reason, I tried to run fasted, at least 16 hours. Although I don't think it's necessary, but I find a benefit if I do eat a high-fat meal the day before. So something that's going to not sit in my stomach too long, or at least if I've had enough time for it to digest and pass through a little bit. But high fat will fill the intracellular myolipids probably twice as much as a normal person has the capability to. And all this does is just supplies readily available fat to be converted into ketones in the mitochondria. So I find a fat feed the night before to be helpful. You don't hold the water with this either, although you may put a fraction on in regards to weight. But there's no reason why you can't run and ride fasted, especially if you are fully adapted. But I do find a benefit if I eat lots of high-fat foods the night prior. That's my take, and that's my approach.
Yeah, I used to be into mountain biking, and carb loading was the big thing, wasn't it? Before big events, people would just fill their face with pasta the night before. I don't know what the idea is. Is the idea that you're going to max out your skeletal muscle glycogen stores and your liver glycogen store? Is that how it's meant to work? But that certainly doesn't. I mean, that's not really going to last you for an endurance event.
No, it definitely doesn't. And what people don't realize is that the glycogen stores are nothing more than a dumping ground for a toxin, for sugar. It's a safety mechanism to save our life. We've put lots of poison or toxin into the body, and that's the body's way of keeping us alive, by pulling it out of the blood and storing it in muscle glycogen. And it's not actually muscle glycogen that is the definitive factor in regards to athletic performance on endurance or anything else for that matter. It's blood glucose. Interesting podcast that we recorded with Professor Noakes recently. And it shows that the brain begins to shut down. It's the brain's mechanism for keeping us alive. If we become hypoglycemic, we begin to bonk because we need that glucose for the brain. But the body can produce glucose. It produces enough glucose through gluconeogenesis. If you are fat adapted, and even if you're not, 5 to 10 grams per hour is usually enough for a carb athlete to even maintain healthy blood glucose levels and allow them to run or ride an endurance event. These figures of 90, 100 grams, 120 grams of glucose per hour are nothing more than a market employed by the sugar companies in order to get you to buy a product. They can't sell 5 grams of sugar because you can get that from anywhere. So it is nothing more than a market employee. And it baffles me everywhere you turn and every website you go on to do with endurance. It's always make sure you've carb loaded and you have adequate carbohydrate. The furthest, so I did that 112 mile bike ride. I took 2 of my keto bars with me and a raspberry bomb, which is exogenous ketones and electrolytes. And that was it. That was a 6 or 7 mile bike ride, hour bike ride. fasted and I didn't eat. So I was probably 36-hour fasted by the time I ate prior, did that ride and ate after. And I felt fantastic. I was, my bum was hurting, but sitting that long on the bike. But my energy as far as athletic performance goes was not hindered. And that's something people need to get their heads around is, your body carries everything that we need. Even the leanest person with a 6% body fat carries around 150,000 kilojoules of energy. That's 15 times more stored energy than the same person, their equivalent, their counterpart with stored glycogen, glucose in the form of glycogen. So we don't need it, but it's all about these small incremental changes that could impact and make that difference within a race. And for me, fat loading does help. Whether it's mental, I'm unsure, but it certainly doesn't hinder. But is it necessary? I don't believe so. But try it and see what works best for you.
Yeah, interestingly, do you guys know that the endurance cycling record for Land's End to John O'Groats in Scotland, which is just a fraction over 600 miles, was set in 2016 by a 65-year-old man, and hasn't been beaten since. He did it in a fraction over 24 hours, non-stop. So, the people talk about that old man strength, but old man endurance is something special. It's not really to do with fat and energy, but I think it's fascinating that nobody younger than 65 has been able to smash that record yet.
Nicely said. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that at all. I think the main thing is the weight side of it for endurance runs. So being as light as possible. You've got, such a huge abundance of energy on your body and stored body fat. Not ideal to go for a long endurance cycle if you're like 3% body fat. So I wouldn't recommend that. I'd probably do it in a way that you gradually increase your food intake to avoid gastric upset. And I wouldn't be doing a fat hit the night before because you might get the runs. So I just make sure your glycogen's full so you feel strong, energetic. You probably be actually at your highest body weight, but you're not going to be inflamed. That's probably the way I'd probably approach it. The day of the race, anecdotal, go by feel. If you're hungry, then have some food. The volume of the food won't be great. It's not going to be massive. I wouldn't have a giant, I don't know, I wouldn't have one of my 10 of my butter bites before one of those sort of sessions because I feel sick. Just get the stomach, like the bloating. If you are going to have a meal, I'd keep it under about 300 or 400 grams in total weight. The stomach capacity can hold about 400 milliliters at a given time. So that's kind of my opinion on it. Do you have anything to add to that at all, Stephen?
No. I think it's so well covered. And I think what we learned last week is sometimes the answers, we don't need everybody to answer.
Yeah, fair.
The side question could be about hydration as well on an event like that. If you're going to go for hours and hours, what would you do? Would you try and use your cellular water as much as possible? And because I think we talked about this recently, but they've tested people at the end of marathons and found that they were actually super hydrated at the end of these events. Because and again, the corporations will try and sell you Gatorade and sports drinks and all that kind of stuff, and as you go. So what would be your approach, Rich, to hydration?
So I've obviously, as you guys know, I produce electrolytes. I think hydration is incredibly important, but I would argue that hydration isn't just about water. Yeah, well done, Steve. It's about the minerals, and too much water can flush out electrolytes. A lot of the salt we consume is reabsorbed, but I believe the electrolyte balance is more important over how much we put in or the ratio. But it's coming into an event, I make sure that I'm well hydrated the day prior. On the day, I'll consume something in the morning. I usually take a raspberry bomb before a high big endurance event for me, like the duathlon I competed in recently. But I would drink that which contains electrolytes and exogenous ketones. I would drink that and make sure that it's drunk at least half an hour before the event. So I've got time to go for a pee. Surprisingly, a lot of that liquid comes out, but I'm super hydrated. The BHB is there working. And that's all I use. I can run, a half marathon on nothing else. no, I haven't gone beyond that. But in terms of the cycle, the 112-mile cycle, I mean, you're talking 6 or 7 hours. I didn't drink an awful lot. I remember doing an 80-mile bike ride once on 1 bottle of water with electrolytes. But I went into that really hydrated, but I didn't need my requirement to replace during, was not excessive. Everybody else was carbing up and drinking all sorts, but it's, I think the right amount and the ratio is more important than volume.
That sounds sensible. Yeah, it's very relative. I wouldn't add much to that. Just say, Richard drinks significantly more than I drink, but he adds in electrolytes at a significantly higher rate than I do. Both methods work. It's just you find your sweet spot. So if I noticed I was feeling dry all the time, then I'd add in more. Got the next question now from Zacharias Eliasson. I think I've done a good job of saying that name, I think. Good evening, 24 years old, strict carnivore 4 months and feel amazing. Question 1. What is considered good leptin levels in picomoles per litre? I don't have a clue. Do you guys know?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget I'm a phlebotomist.
I knew you would.
Yeah, so a picomole per litre is an unusual measurement in some countries, and it would be nanograms per milliliter. So if we do that first, it's really easy to remember leptin levels are 1 to 10 nanograms per milliliter. That's it. But if you convert it to picomoles, the factor is 2.7. So it's 2.78 picomoles to 27.8 picomoles is the sort of level you want. Question would be, why are you testing your leptin? Just out of interest, because it's not so much about the amount of leptin you're producing, it's how receptive your brain is to the signal. So you might have heard of leptin resistance. So it's good to know the levels, but it's also more interesting to know just how receptive the brain is. And you can get that. You're talking big bucks now, functional MRI, that sort of thing. But it's absolutely fascinating. And leptin, of course, comes from the fat cells and tells you stop eating. I mean, it's I think maybe under-discussed hormone, maybe.
It was only discovered recently as well, wasn't it? Only in the last kind of 30 years or something like that. But Stephen, wouldn't levels change constantly throughout the day as well? So it depends when you measure.
Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely. I mean, being fatter, if you've got more fat cells, there's a likelihood of more leptin. There's a lot going on. There is a lot going on. And then you've got ghrelin, which of course your hunger hormone. And they were a big deal, weren't they? Like you say, about 30 years ago, when they sort of hit the headlines. Well, we found these 2 miracle things. I can remember people saying, wow, if we can control ghrelin and leptin, that's it. We don't have to worry about anything else. As with all nutrition science, an absolute load of tosh. But there you go.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know much about this at all. I know about leptin resistance and things like that, but outside of that, I'd look at symptomology. You can have numbers all over the place, but it doesn't mean much. I mean, I know people with, high range vitamin D and low range vitamin D, but they present as very healthy, active, physically active people. So I don't know. But yeah, good question. We got a next question from.
I was just about
Carl.
to show it. There we go.
Oh, there we go. We're both on the buttons today, guys. I'm sorry. I'll let you take over, Stephen. But yeah, the question is, evening all, can you explain what the effects are on the metabolism of a low-fat diet, i.e. Weight Watchers Slimming World, is followed? Stephen, do you want to have a go on this one, and maybe Ben as well?
Yeah, okay. And I know Richard will want to, so I'll be short and I'll give a bit of time over to Rich. What are the effects on metabolism if you have a low-fat diet or a Weight Watchers Slimming World type of thing? Right, let's do this really basically. Human body is incredibly adaptive. If you feed it, let's say, 10% less than it needs, it will adapt to survive on 10% less than it needs. So what will happen is you are signing yourself to a long struggle of weight control, because if you're eating 2,000 units of food, but you need 3,000, you're just going to live on 2,000. Your body's going to downregulate everything. It's going to slow your metabolic rate down, and you're going to live at 2,000 units. Now, if someone comes along and says you're a bit malnourished, look at your bone density, it's terrible, your muscle is wasting away, you need to increase your protein, you need to increase your nutrients, that person is going to have a big problem. So this is why you get the old yo-yo dieting, the rebound weight. The most common phrase is, oh, I did what Weight Watchers, I lost 20 pounds and then I put it all back on and another 5. And that's it in a nutshell. A low-fat diet, it's not so much about metabolism, it's more about overall health. Fat is cofactor in many things like the production of hormones. So if you're on a low-fat diet, you're going to have problems possibly if you're female and later life with your thyroid. That's a big factor because it needs fat to make thyroid hormone. Energy supply. And I'm going to stop now because I want the other guys to chime in.
And
Go on, Richard.
Just chip in slightly. Weight is not the thing you should be watching anyway. I'd much rather people use the tape measure than the scales, because it's very easy to lose muscle mass and it's very easy to lose bone density over time, all of which affects your weight. But that's not really what it's all about. So I think a lot of people who do these low fat programs will be losing the things that they really want to keep.
Yeah, I agree. I've got nothing to add to that. I think you guys have covered everything.
Yeah, well said. That the main point I took away from what Stephen said was about the adaptive metabolism. Like, it's not exactly true that you can completely halt your metabolism. Eventually you'll lose fat, but a lot of things happen before that point. So you start to get symptoms of low energy. Your sleep goes to crap. You just don't feel good. You get dry skin, irritable. This will probably be a useful sort of topic to talk about with Richard if I get a chance to get him on my YouTube channel at some point, because we could talk about contest dieting, a bodybuilder's perspective, because we're the people that get very lean and get a bit bigger and get very lean in a cyclical kind of fashion. So that'd be quite a useful one to go through. But yeah, well, very well said, Stephen. Cheers. The next question is from Matthew, which is, did any of you experiment eating 7 to 10 cups of vegetables? I did it for about 2 years. I felt good and energetic mentally, but was bloated and wasn't very strong in the gym. Probably all of us have. What about you, Ben? What do you think? How was the vegetables for you?
I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I do know that because I play like competitive chess as well, and I've got a chess YouTube channel out of interest. But I do think that my brain sometimes wakes up like in the short term if I eat carbs. But energetic mentally I get, but I mean, no, not really. That's not for years. No, I wouldn't eat that many veg. I avoid them with a long stick.
Yeah, what about you, Richard?
Yeah, my gravitation into becoming carnivore began as many of us do. I started with low carb, then I gravitated into a dirty keto lifestyle. And I felt incredible, even on dirty keto, the healthiest that I'd ever felt. Then gravitated into a standard type ketogenic lifestyle, then strict. I was eating my kale and spinach smoothies, or drinking my kale and spinach smoothies with turmeric and black pepper every day, eating tubs and tubs of kale. And I felt awesome. I was still healthier and fitter than I was on a standard diet. And I think that's important to remember, that this is a journey. And this is what a lot of people will attest to when they begin, even a vegan or vegetarian diet, they will say that it's conferred a benefit and they feel healthier and fitter. But I was healthier and fitter in spite of, and not because of. I'd removed lots of processed foods and takeaways, and I was at least eating real food. Yes, vegetables, and I'm not anti-vegetable. I just believe that there is a healthier way to live. And it was through laziness that I gravitated into just eating meat. I was in work and it's so easy to fry a steak, especially if you like it rare, mooing the way that I do. 2 minutes in the pan. To cook vegetables was a chore. So I went 6 months without any veg, and I felt even better than I did prior to that. And I didn't think that I could. I went to an entirely different level. My mental clarity, my energy, everything was now at a level I didn't even know existed. And had it not been for removing those vegetables, I would have never have experienced those things. But yeah, I can attest to the bloating. Now, if I do put them back in, I don't feel very well immediately. And this is an exaggerated response, which many can attest to and live in the lifestyle. Some of the feedback that I get from people who begin keto and carnivore and then gravitate back into eating carbs, for example, from grains, will say that living the lifestyle has made them gluten intolerant. But it hasn't. It's enhanced their body's ability to recognize when they put in a toxin in. You've been super fit and healthy. Now you've put a toxin back in and the body's like, whoa, I don't want this rubbish. So don't put it back in. In the same way that we do with alcohol. The first time you drink a glass of wine or beer, this affects you. You get a bit of, lightheaded and become a little bit tipsy. And then the next time you drink, nothing happens. So you drink more and you drink more. It doesn't mean that damage of the alcohol isn't occurring. It's just your body's ability to recognize it is being diminished. And it's the same with these foods. So if I were to put veg back in now, I wouldn't feel too sharp the next day. I genuinely believe that an animal-based, if not complete animal diet is the creme de la creme. I believe that's the pinnacle. In my experience, I am healthier and fitter now than I've ever been eating nothing but beef and lamb. I do eat eggs and cheese as well. And occasionally, don't shoot me, but I do indulge in a Greek yogurt. But I could never go back. But that doesn't mean that you can't live a healthy lifestyle with vegetables. Just understand that your nutrients are coming from that animal protein. This whole thing with 7 to 8 cups a day that Dr. Berg promotes. And again, as Stephen said earlier, I'm not against Dr. Berg. I think he's a fantastic advocate. I think he gets a great message and he allows people to gravitate into a healthier lifestyle with simple and easy to understand videos. But where I believe he goes wrong is he overemphasizes the use of the vegetables. We know that these veg contain plant toxins, phytoalexins, these compounds that are damaging to the human body. A lot of these compounds cause clastogenesis and DNA damage. They damage all the cells in the body, causing lots of issues. We could go to town on this, but let's get through some more questions. But these plants are toxins. It doesn't mean that you have to remove them in the way that we have. You can live that lifestyle with a little bit of veg in. Just always remember that your nutrients are coming from your animal proteins, your protein, your amino acids, and your fats. That's where your nutrients are coming from.
Yeah, well said. Nothing really adds to that. I did a vegetarian diet for 3 or 4 days and felt like crap, and I got kidney stones. So that was my stint, and it didn't last very long. So it kind of tells you. But yeah, we can move on to the next question unless Stephen's got anything. So the part 2 question. What do you think about using fasting for cutting or a deficit? I'm trying to lean out a bit and currently eating at maintenance and throwing in some 24 to 72 hour fasts here and there for a weekly deficit. Well, I've got a video which is titled How to Fast Without Losing Muscle. And it pretty much answers that question very, very well. It got a decent amount of views actually, so apparently it's quite a good video. I think it does work. I'll just be conscious of getting enough protein on the days that you are eating, and also enough fat as well. So don't get into that point where you're depleting. If you've got a lot of excess body fat, that could be quite useful too. I've had very few experiences where I've got anyone to do more than a 1 day fast, really. Usually it's in the case where they've binged, eaten, and they need to sort of get the stuff out of the system quicker. Outside of that, I think a less abrasive approach is usually better. So that means just eating a bit less, but for a longer period of time. But that's just my experience. I find a lot of people binge eat after these fasts. So if you're one of those people, probably avoid it. So it depends on your mindset. If you know you can get back on the cart, whatever it is, back on the horse straight away, then I'd use it as an effective tool. Just be conscious of eating the right food when you're back on the diet. What have you guys found? So Stephen, what have you found with fasts? I know you quite like that sort of thing.
I think fasting has a place. No, I personally don't like fasting. For me, I eat 2 meals a day more often than not. I'm more into the therapeutic reason for fasting. I think fasting does help if you've got inflammation. I think if you are looking to basically retrain your body, I think it's quite a good thing. But I'm going off the subject. I'm not talking about cutting for deficit and leaning out and all that sort of stuff. So I think I'll leave that to you, Jonathan and Rich, because you've both done that for bodybuilding shows. When I did my bodybuilding show, I wasn't carnivore. That was when I was 23 and high carb. So I can tell you what I did then. I had fibrous carbs, which was a posh way of saying green veg for a few days. That was it. So, you know, that doesn't help anyone. So yeah, I'd rather defer to Rich and yourself, Jonathan.
Yeah, go on, Richard. What have you found?
Yeah, so I find it a useful tool. I find a slightly different approach more beneficial for me. If I reduce the amount I eat daily, I find that I don't lose any weight. Coming back to this metabolic thing that Stephen mentioned, my body just seems to adjust. But I take things back to basics, and the fundamentals are that we are fat burning machines. We have incredibly large fat deposits within our body for that very reason, for time of fasting. I think we need adequate protein. I think we look at the protein intake on a daily basis, but I believe that if our week's worth of protein is consumed within that window, i.e. divided by 7, and if you miss a day, then you eat, the extra protein over the other days, I believe that we can maintain muscle mass comfortably. And I think that I did that when I competed. Despite the weight loss, I was straight back to lifting PBs within 2 weeks after being, 2% body fat. But the best approach for me, I found, was beginning with 1 day of going low fat. So making sure I was eating adequate protein. That's at least 0.82 grams. We need at least 0.5 to maintain. 0.82 to grow, and I always wanted to give my body the opportunity to grow when I was cutting. So I'd eat at least 0.82. But I would reduce my fat. So 1 week, this is the way that I'd suggest to do it if you weren't competing, is I'd do Monday, for example, with as leaner cuts as you can on still adequate protein, and then continue on the other days the same. Next week, I would do maybe Monday, Tuesday, and then eat the high-fat meal as you would previously on the Wednesday, and then maybe have 2 or 3 days high-fat, and just incrementing and implementing these lower-fat days, because I think that's more important than fasting. I think the benefits of fasting, mitophagy, autophagy, brown fat activation, we are always in that zone when we are ketogenic, and being carnivore, we're in a ketogenic state. So we're always eliciting those responses. But I do believe that if you were to do a 24-hour, 36 or 48-hour fast, this would put the fat oxidation into overdrive, as long as you rightly say you do not binge and over and undo all of the work that you've put in. Sustainably, it needs to be sustainable. And you've probably experienced the same, where you push to an extremity and you, as you say, you fall off the wagon and it's game over. So it's got to be sustainable. These things are not achieved overnight. And I believe that slow and steady wins the race. We have the ability to move that needle. I dropped and cut stupid amounts of weight previously for a competition in 5 weeks on zero cardio, purely through macro manipulation, but it hurt. I had brain fog. I couldn't speak properly. I remember giving a presentation, not being able to form words, and I had to hand over to a colleague in order to carry on with the presentation because my brain wasn't functioning. So this is why the approach of maybe doing lean fat days a couple of times a week may be more beneficial. Now, when people ask me, do I fast? My answer is no, because I don't actively fast. But the reality is I haven't eaten today, and I haven't eaten since 8 p.m. yesterday. So I'm close to a 24-hour fast, but I haven't been hungry. I eat when I'm hungry. I listen to my body. And this is the best advice that I can give anyone. Eat to satiety. If you're not hungry, don't eat. When you're hungry, eat, and stop when you're full. Listen to your body. Some days I may eat 3 times a day or 4 times a day. Other days, as in today, is going to be a 24-hour fast. But I haven't actively woken up thinking to myself, I'm going to fast for 24 hours today. I'm listening to my body and I'm adjusting as we go. You can put every plan that you want into place. You can have all the macros mapped out. You can't account for stress burning more energy. You can't account for the tapping of your pen, or you know, sitting in your, all of these little micro movements that you do with the brain working overtime. Yes, you can look at your Garmin and all of these, you know, technological devices that we have to count the amount of calorie value that we've burned. But as we know, it's not about the calories, but you can't account for all of these little things that go on within the body. So adjust, but remember, it's also okay to be a little bit hungry. We don't always have to be in a fed state. A little hunger pang now and again isn't going to hurt. That means that, you know, you're in that brown fat activation stage and you are burning that fat. Leave it go an hour or two. And you may even find that hour or two later, you're no longer hungry, because it's more of a mental thing than anything else. So that would be my advice. I think fasting is a fantastic tool, but I believe macro manipulation over reducing fat on having leaner days, then, if you like, is more beneficial than maybe doing, you know, the 2 or 3 days fast. But always make sure you get your protein in over that week. I think that's really important.
Yeah, everything Richard said, I completely agree with. So we've obviously had the same experience, which is quite interesting. And probably with consulting with people as well, it seems to be a more useful tool to actually just adjust the macros. Like he said, you can't account for the non-exercise activity thermogenesis. You won't be able to do it very accurately. So your best bet is just having a default macro plan, say over a week. That's your default. Okay, I didn't lose fat this week. Okay, you can either increase activity or decrease the fat grams. Protein stays pretty stable for the most part, but you can even lower that if it's 400 grams per day. That could be a reason why you're holding onto fat still, because the glucose level in your blood is just too high. So it's certainly possible. Do either of you other guys have any takes on fasting for deficits in terms of fat loss?
Not really. I mean, I only use it for cleanup therapeutic purposes. Like I blew out some chronic inflammation in my foot that I'd had for 6 weeks, and I blew it out with a 48-hour dry fast. I actually broke a 30-hour dry fast yesterday, which was deliberate. I wasn't feeling great. I was feeling groggy in my stomach, so I thought I'm going to dry fast for just over 24 hours. So if I fast now, it will be without liquids, and I'll do it for a shorter period. 3 days, day 3 was absolutely horrible. But I have heard, and I don't know if any of you guys can corroborate this, that dry fasting doesn't waste muscle in the way that water fasting does. Have you got any light on that?
I think in a fat adapted person, it wouldn't waste muscle as much. The reason being is you produce more metabolic water. And usually if your body senses, okay, I'm dehydrated, so I'm losing a lot of water, so you're not taking in the electrolytes with it in a lot of cases, your body's going to notice that's a stress signal, in which case it's going to release a lot of cortisol, and your body's not going to want to retain muscle tissue. It's going to just oxidize everything it can, because it's not in a position to hold on to everything that you've spent a long time building up, especially if you've built new muscle, you know. That's kind of my experience. Have you guys got a take on that at all?
No, I think you've covered everything. Fantastic.
Fair. Okay, we'll go to the next question, which is this one. Before you all get into the meat and gravy of the program, I have got through the craving by doing a few sets of exercise. The question is, when you get into a battle with your hypothalamus, what's your strategies? I'm guessing he means when you don't have that mind over matter kind of thing, when you're struggling to, I don't know, lose fat, or what you crave, like carbs, or I don't know, what do they call them, Yorkies or chocolate bars. My strategy is just to remember how I feel before, during, and after each of those interventions. I call them, or there's another word for it. But I notice I always feel worse after them. So it tells me, well, I've done it enough times now. I notice every time I do that, this thing, I eat the wrong food, I feel like crap afterwards. So I just recognize now not to do it. And that's not to say that I'm perfect and I never break the diet. I'd say my adherence is about 98% carnivore by macronutrient gram value, which I think is pretty good. But then again, there's some days where I just have something I'm not meant to have. Usually it's, recently it's been like a Chinese, so it'll be like the sauce with beef or chicken, you know, once a week or so maybe, but it's not been that frequently, to be fair. But what about you guys? How's your experience been when you're trying to sort of mitigate that kind of feeling when you want to try and have something, but you know it's bad for you? Perhaps Stephen.
Well, I don't have it. because it's bad for me. This is one of the things I say to people is no one's ever said to me, I've taken up smoking for my health. Everyone smokes and knows it's not good for their health. So that's an addiction. I think the hypothalamus reference there is because it does release dopamine, by the way. It releases dopamine to reduce the amount of prolactin being produced, but that's for another day and completely different mechanism, but it has the same effect. And I think if you're talking about the dopamine hit, you can see in a functional MRI, and maybe it's knowledge that's helpful for me. When that crazy headline came out that cocaine is 1/7 as addictive as sugar, that was just based on the images, because the firing of the on the synapse basically lit up a functional MRI 7 times as much as it did for cocaine as it did for sugar. So it was a good headline. It doesn't mean it's 7 times more addictive, and I think it's addictive in a different way, obviously. So I think understanding that I want this because it's the other thing I always use is I've never sat anywhere and thought, really, I fancy a hot dog and Coke. Unless I go to the movies, and that's it, because it's situational. It's like, oh well, I used to do this as a kid, and I used to really enjoy this. I'm never hungry for that food. I'm never hungry for popcorn unless I'm in the movies. Not anymore, but that's I think just opening yourself to what's happening to you is the way I cope. Maybe that's a bit too intellectual and not emotional enough. So if I'm stressed, if my go-to when I was stressed was to eat something like chocolate, I know that's not good for me. So I just talk to myself differently about it. That's it. And it might be easier for me. I don't know. I'm not belittling addiction, because I think there are people out there really struggling with addiction. And I think, it's one of those things that's under-discussed and still misunderstood, I think, by a lot of people. It's not gluttony. It's not weak will. So I'm not saying I've got a strong will and you've got a weak will, because addiction is a really strong driving force, and it's documented. You can see it in images. You can see that it actually has a mechanism. For some people, it's incredible. And what the brain does, it tries to stop you. So if you've got the synapse and you've got the connection there, it actually retracts the receptors. It does that. But this explains why people need 1 cigarette, then they need 2, then they need 3, because humans have this other, function of surviving, doing things for pleasure. It says, right, well, there's less receptors, so therefore we need a bigger signal because the receptors are smaller. And those people that are very addicted to certain things, they have that trait. They might say, oh, it's amazing, I gave up cigarettes, but now all I do is eat Krispy Kreme donuts. So it's part of the way they're built, I think, and also possibly the way they're thinking about things. So it's a tough one. But anyway, for me, it was knowledge, understanding what's going on, and talking to myself differently.
Yeah, very well said. I like that as well. Your discussion about the synapse as well. So it makes perfect sense to me. So thanks for outlining that. How about you, Ben? I know you kind of go on and off, like having a drink sometimes here and there. I mean, how does that affect you, and what sort of keeps you off?
Alcohol is the worst thing for me, because I'm also one of those people that I get a kind of opiate response to alcohol. So, where like my wife can have a few glasses of wine and then falls asleep. It does the opposite to me. It wakes me up. And then the carb monster wakes up, and a couple of weeks ago, I had too much to drink one night and went and raided the carb cupboard, because my inhibitions all went. And then, that's why I might do a fast, for example, after that. But I think, the thing for me is now it's not one drink. I just don't have one, because of the knock-on effect. But yeah, and on the Big Fat Challenge, one of the things that we say is, you don't fall off the wagon, you throw yourself off, and it's not a cheat, because in life, a cheat gives you an advantage. And it's not, it's deliberate self-sabotage. But if you choose to do it, for example, I've had a drink the night before, I might go down to the shop and buy myself 4 butter croissants and eat them with a heap of butter on them. Right. But the important thing is, if you're going to do that, then you must own the fact that it's your choice and, you know, you're not a victim of it. You own all the consequences of that choice, and you damn well enjoy every single bite. Otherwise, what's the point? Don't sit there thinking, I hate myself for eating these chocolate digestives, because, you know, that's the worst possible outcome. But yeah, I'm kind of like you. I remind myself how much better it feels when I'm clean. If I jump off the wagon, then I will probably do a fast and then get straight back on.
Well said. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's useful to have different anecdotes for this because we've all got a slightly different take on it and what we found useful. How about you, Richard? What have you found to be beneficial?
Yeah, so as Stephen said, it's not your fault. Sugar is an addiction, and we are hardwired to chase dopamine hits. It's been essential for the survival of the human race. And we can get it through a number of ways. We can get it naturally if we're fit and healthy. We can get it through procreation, which isn't always our choice. Or we can get it through a sugary treat. And that's what we do. We reach for that sugary treat. But in doing so, also, we must remember and realize that we are blocking our body's ability to create that neurotransmitter naturally and healthily. So we need things like tyrosine and tryptophan for our neurotransmitters. These are converted into our neurotransmitters, but they go through a series of steps which involve cofactors, things like zinc, iron, magnesium, vitamin B12, iron. If we consume certain foods, sugary treats, breads, pastas, rice, things that contain lectins or phytic acid, these things such as zinc can be blocked by as much as, these cofactors can be blocked by as much as 100%. Therefore, negating our body's ability to create that neurotransmitter and our desire to chase that dopamine hit again and again and again. So when we're having that treat, you must understand that you're going to crave it again soon after. It could be an hour later, the next day. So you need to be prepared to combat that and understand that when you are eating a proper animal-based lifestyle, devoid of these lectins and phytic acids and other anti-nutrients, your body will eventually have the ability to create these neurotransmitters without the cofactors being damaged. Now, that said, when it comes to addiction or cravings, there are a number of things you can do. Go out in the sun without your sunglasses on, because the sunlight stimulates MSH, melanocyte-stimulating hormone, which blocks or curbs hunger extensively. So I'm not telling you to go out and look at the sun for 10 hours, but get some sun through the eyes, and it's through the eyes that MSH is activated. We can also increase cholecystokinin through things like omega-3s and saturated fats. And we can supplement with glutamine. So if you were to drink some glutamine, now none of these are magic fixes. They're not going to completely absolve your craving, but they can help you manage. And quite often, craving for a sugary treat might be an electrolyte deficiency. So your body may be telling you need some salt. So what my first port of call is go and cook some bacon and eggs, or go and get a fatty cut of steak and salt that up, or eat some cheese. You know, make sure that you are covering those bases. Chuck some sardines and mackerel in there if you want. And 9 times out of 10, those cravings will go away because you are then satisfying the body with everything that it needs. You're covering all bases, and get outside and be in the sun. I think that's incredibly important. But there's a couple of tools there. But the fact of the matter is, if you are, and I don't want to use the word strict enough, because I don't find living this lifestyle is strict. I find it highly indulgent. I love the food that I eat. I get to eat the food I love every day. It's amazing. I don't get cravings. I get cravings, but I don't crave sugary treats. I crave my fatty cut of steak or my mince or my eggs. I don't crave sugar anymore, but I've probably persevered for so long that those cravings are now in check, and my dopamine is being created naturally through the food that we eat. But a couple of takeaways there anyway. So there's a few points that you may be able to implement to help combat those cravings.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, actually. You made me some good points about the sunlight and all the health hacks that people often ignore. And the people that tend to be addicted to food are people that sit at home late at night watching Netflix all day, get so much blue light exposure. So it makes perfect sense. I'd implement all of those myself, just to be sure. You should be doing them anyway, in my opinion. The question is, this will probably be the last question for us guys tonight. So apologies, we have not got around to answering your question yet. Be sure next time to tune in as early as possible and obviously ask your questions. And I do put the stream out quite early on my channel. I think about the day before usually. If not, Stephen will do it next week, and it'll be whenever he gets around to doing it. So just put a question there, and that'll be answered first in the order that they come up on the screen. The question now is from Lucy Cockerell, and that is, how long have you all been carnivore? I've been carnivore since February the 2nd, 2020, which means about just under 4 years. I've been a lot stricter the last year or so, and I found it much beneficial. So if my adherence beforehand was 85%, now it's like 98%. And I find that much better for myself. I find if I go below that, maybe 90% mark in terms of macronutrient grams, then I feel just not that great. My diet is about, on average, 250 protein, 250 fat. I keep it under 50 carbs for the most part, and it's usually through raw dairy, eggs, cheese, and sometimes I'll add some artificial sweeteners, just because I like them. And I can also not have them, so I'm not really addicted in that case. But what about you guys? How long have you been carnivore?
I'm almost the same as you, Jonathan, about 4 years. But I've only had like weeks of being very strict at a time, probably 90% on average. And like you know, if I overindulge on anything else, then my body lets me know it. Well, you know, like for example, I had, you know, breakfast this morning, bacon, sausage and eggs, but I had a fried tomato and some fried mushrooms on the side as well. But for me, the key is having a lot of meat and a lot of fat. And as long as I do that, I'm okay. By the way, I mean, the biological definition of a hypercarnivore is an animal that gets more than 70% of its calories from other animals as well. So, you know, we all fit that parameter.
Hands down. Yeah, I've been keto or ketogenic for 10, 11 years, 4 of which have been carnivore, or I'd call, what's the buzzword at the moment, animal-based. Same as you guys, I still used to indulge occasionally. I've been a lot stricter this past year and a half, and I do feel it beneficial, but I think also having, as you say, Ben, that ability to have a fried tomato, should you wish to do so, you understand the compounds it contains and the downstream deleterious effects, but your body can deal with it. I know having that occasionally isn't gonna cause any harm, you know, but your body lets you know, as you say, and I think that's important, having that flexibility. But yeah, take from that what you will. Ketogenic, 10, 11 years, carnivore-ish, 4, and fairly strict, or reasonably strict, I guess, to what people would call it. Most days all I eat is beef and lamb, but quite partial to some eggs as well. But that is me.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record, aren't we? Because I started at 55 and I'm 59 and a half now. So that makes me 4.5 years carnivore. I remember it because I started low carb on my 50th birthday. By my 53rd birthday, I went keto, and then 2 years later, I went carnivore. My favorite meals are carnivore meals, really, to be honest. Fatty lamb, I'm really liking at the moment. I've fallen back in love with pork because we've got a different butcher, and it tastes like pork used to taste like when I was 20. It's very nice. Ribeye is pretty good. I like a lamb shank. I like eggs. I like a lot of fish because I couldn't eat fish up until I was age 50. So salmon, I love. Sea bass is really nice. Scallops. I'm not with the other guys about the veg. I don't like the veg. The veg does not like me. That's the thing. So I used to like things like cheesy leeks, and I went to a carvery, I don't know, a year ago. I thought, wow, come on. Just what Rich just said, it's not going to hurt me. But oh boy, did it hurt me. It really did. So plenty of trips to the toilet, and I just thought, I don't like cheesy leeks that much, and they absolutely hate me. So that was the end of that love affair. So yeah, 4.5 years. I can't see me stopping in any way. As for Rich saying about animal-based, no, we're carnivores. Animal-based is like Paul Saladino, where you've got tons of fruit.
It's a cop-out.
It's a cop-out. Yeah, well said, mate. Yeah, a cop-out.
Yeah, sorry if I've offended anyone there, but someone asked me recently, they sort of said, I'm strict animal-based. I'm like, that's not strict at all. Either you're omnivorous, carnivorous, or herbivorous. there's no such thing as strict animal based because it doesn't have a defined amount. It just means you're eating everything pretty much. So, but yeah, I'll just quickly say my main meals. I love salmon, poached salmon. I love eggs, scrambled eggs with cheese. I love raw milk with whey protein, chocolate. I use Richard's Keto Pro strawberry protein powder, and what else do I like? Beef brisket with loads of butter. That's about it. What about you, Ben, and also you, Richard?
Yeah, lamb mince and beef mince just fried up. Sometimes with a splash of Worcestershire sauce on it. My favourite snack at the minute is actually smoked mackerel from Aldi. In a packet, I can just pick one out and munch on it, and I know it's packed with omega-3s as well, and tastes good, and I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I'm pretty boring. It's I'm quite fond of chuck steak or casserole steak. It's one of the cheaper cuts, incredibly fatty. It's meant to be slow cooked because of the fat content in there, but I just pan fry it. Absolutely delicious. I am quite partial to eggs. I gravitated more towards lamb recently. I'm loving lamb in all forms. So beef and lamb in all forms, mince, joints, all sorts of cuts you can think of. I eat quite a lot of eggs on an average week. I don't eat eggs every day. And a treat for me is generally I like a lot of cheese. I'm conscious of certain compounds in there that may not confer a benefit, i.e. the casein and the calcium. Talk for another day probably, but it's but I think everything else is in check. So if all I've got to worry about is 100 or 200 grams of cheese every few days, then I think I'm doing okay.
Excellent. Beautiful. It seems like we all eat pretty much the same sort of thing. Yeah, nothing really to add to that at all. I think it's interesting. We sort of say, what do we like? And it's like, there's about 5 foods we all eat pretty much or less. So there we go. So recipe books aren't very interesting if we're ever going to print one of those. So, yeah, I'm just going to wrap this up now, guys. So if you want to follow any of us, I am Jonathan. My YouTube channel is Carnivore Muscle. My website is compositionconsultant.com. To the right of me on the screen is Coach Stephen. His YouTube channel name is, I believe, his name that's on the screen right now. He also has a link tree, I believe, and all the links to his consultations, website stuff there as well. He's got a cool app, so I recommend checking that one out as well. Ben Hunt and Phil Escott, who's busy at the moment, they represent the Big Fat Challenge. You can find Phil Escott on YouTube as well. I recommend searching them out on socials, reaching out to them, find out about their tribe, their community. It's a great place to be. And also the Keto Pro, ketopro.com is the website. And that's Richard Smith, if you want to follow him on any socials as well. He also has a YouTube channel, which I highly recommend looking at. And especially that Tim Noakes talk that he did. That's a very informative one. It's about an hour long. Loads of gold nuggets of information. If you're athletic, focused on performance, I recommend checking that one out as well. Do any of you guys have any last words?
Thanks for your questions, guys. Enjoyed it.
Excellent. All right, cheers. Take care, everyone, and I'll